Hey guys, Barrett here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about ways to level up your serve. Here's the cool thing about this video. Later on, we're going to talk about something that's really going to change your mindset. It's really going to change the way you think about your serve in case you're more on the safe side when it comes to your serve. However, this first tip I have for you is super simple. Something that you can do right now, okay? So let's get started. Luckily, the first tip I have for you is super simple, and it's something that you can go and do right now, today, right after you watch this video. And it's very simply to just serve from a different position on the court. A lot of people, when they line up to serve, they're just sitting right here. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that, but if you want to level up your serve, start to get some different angles going here. When you serve from the corner, or when you serve from the tee or from the center line here, you're giving your opponent a completely different angle on the ball. So typically what happens is if you serve from the corner, you'll want to serve towards your opponent's sideline, okay? Or if you're serving from the tee, you serve straight down the center line. Now, you do have to recognize which one's going to be easier for you, because obviously, you know, if you're a right-hander, then serving down the center line is easier on the left side of the court. But in general, doing these kinds of serves here are great. Not only this, but when you begin to do this more often, it becomes a little bit predictable, and that's when you introduce the mind games. So, you know, as an example, if you see me lined up way over here like this, it's pretty obvious what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a really sharp angle, as I'll show you here in just a second. But then what you do is then you serve down the center line. You see how that works. So doing these kinds of angles is a great way to just switch things up and keep your opponent on their toes. Now, let me give you some examples. Okay, so I'm way back here now. All I'm going to do is just stand over here on the sideline. That's all I'm going to do. And I'm just going to aim for the other sideline. That's it. You don't have to do anything special. You don't have to change your swing. You just hit the ball like you usually do. And what you get is that. So you probably didn't see that, but it hit the sideline and it bounces all the way out. I mean, we're talking by the time it reaches the baseline, it's at least 7 feet out, okay? That is crazy stuff. But again, you don't have to necessarily do anything different. You do have to be careful with the distance. The distance is a bit iffy because the sideline is so close to you, it's a little bit easier to hit it out. But look, same thing with the center line. Like that, just right down the center line. Now, you can probably get it a little tighter. This one's a little bit harder to do, remember, because of the fact that I'm a right-hander. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to do a kind of like an inside-out serve like that, but still, same concept. The other thing about the center line, guys, is that when you do serve down the center line, it's a very short distance. Now, if I come over here instead, if I'm serving this way, right, center line is a lot easier to do as a right-hander. And if I really get it here, yeah, that's better. And same thing works over here, of course. You can hit over to the sideline like that. So just changing up your positioning on the court is going to change your serve drastically, and it's something that you can do without having to actually serve differently. All right, this next one is absolutely killing people. I guarantee you that you are serving way shorter than you think. And the reason for that problem is depth perception. If I'm standing here, way back here on the baseline, and I'm trying to look at the other baseline, the depth perception is getting me, right? So imagine you're in the middle of a desert and you're driving on a highway. You're in Nevada or something. And you're driving all the way down. You can see way down in the distance, you can see kind of that mirage, right? How far is that? You have no clue. You have no idea how far that is, unless you have some sort of geographic understanding, right? But you see what I mean. It is very difficult to know exactly how far my ball is going because I'm so down low, right? Well, that's why I have a camera set up over here on the baseline, on my opponent's baseline, to show you how deep these serves are actually going. So let me turn you around. So I don't have a lot of room here, but I'm going to put you right here. I want you to watch. How deep is this serve going? How deep was that? From your perspective, can you tell? That was unbelievably short. You may think to yourself, that was okay. that was maybe half of the distance, right? That was halfway between the line, kitchen line, and the base line. What about that one? That was still extremely short. But what about that one? What did that look like to you? Let's look at the camera and see. The lesson here, guys, is that if it looks okay to you, it probably wasn't. Once you get used to the depth perception that's required in pickleball, you'll be able to, be more accurate when it comes to the distance of your serves. But that is why we want to put a camera on the baseline like this when we're practicing, because that will really show you how deep you're actually serving the ball. And again, I guarantee you're serving a lot shorter than you think. The key here is to just have confidence. Just understand this phenomenon and just actually serve the ball a little bit harder, a little bit deeper. That's going to help out a lot, because again, the shorter your serve, the worse, the easier the return is going to be. The easier the return is going to be, the harder your third is going to be. I've said that before on the channel, but it's worth repeating. Now, the third tip here is you need to start serving the ball harder. There's really just no way around it at this point, guys. The power serve, hard serves in general, aren't going anywhere. They are here to stay, and you need to adapt. However, there are some relatively easy ways that we can get started in this. You don't necessarily have to serve the ball hard on purpose, like actually swing the ball harder. What we want to have is a little bit more of the lag and the snap. Okay, so let's just start out with something simple. So a very basic serve is that the very shouldery thing, right? It's the shouldery serve. We just use our shoulder. We teach that to beginners. It's a very easy way to get started, and that is great. However, we want to have our wrist involved without actually moving our wrist. That sounds weird, doesn't it? Of course it does. What I mean by that is, do you remember maybe when you were a kid, or you have kids or grandkids, you know how when kids get bored, they do this, right? And they're just so bored out of their mind, right? And they just flop their arms around. That's how I want your wrists to feel when you're serving. So I want you to feel like when you're swinging, your wrist is lagging behind. It's almost like your whole arm is lagging behind, and you can actually grab your arm like this and really grab your arm and just relax your wrist. Let your wrist just flop around. This is how you want it to feel, so that when you swing through the ball like this, your wrist lags behind and you get this snappy action right at the end. So instead of not breaking the wrist at all, and doing this kind of serve, we're instead going to let the wrist lag behind as if we're bored, like this. And you just want to be loose, super, super loose. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you this lag and snap. And then once you get that feeling, you can then start to accentuate that a little bit more and become more aggressive. This is how you can hit the ball harder with more topspin without actually swinging harder. You may be uncomfortable swinging at the ball hard, and that's perfectly fine, but you just really don't have to if you have the lag and snap. So you see that lag kind of motion. I didn't swing the ball hard at all, or swing the paddle hard at all. Just let the wrist lag behind. It's almost like it's super heavy and you're having trouble kind of bringing it through, and then you let it snap at the very last moment. Okay, so I'm back here again. Watch what this looks like from your perspective. You see how I'm not swinging at the ball hard at all. Really, I'm not putting a lot of effort into it. But that snap is what really counts. And again, please understand, I'm not being wristy with the shot. And this is an important point that I want to make sure I really get across here. I'm not wristy like this. It's not like I'm hitting the ball like that. It's just that it lags behind and then snaps at the very last moment. So it gives us a lot of paddle head speed. If you can start to master this, you can get more power and more topspin on your serve without actually having to swing a lot harder at the ball. Now, of course, you can go completely nuts and actually swing harder and give yourself a good step forward and all that sort of stuff, and that's fine. But you don't have to, and that's pretty awesome. Now, I mentioned at the very beginning of the video that I had something important to tell you about serving and about a little bit of a mindset shift, and I'd like to do that now. If you are used to serving the ball soft, you're used to, just serving the ball to so-called start the game, you may be thinking to yourself, I'm serving at 100% efficiency, right? I'm serving at 100% because I get my ball in 100% of the time because I'm serving safely. But you may think to yourself, I'm getting in 100% of the time, but you are not being 100% efficient with the quality and the power of your serve and how it affects the game. The serve is no longer the shot that starts the point. That's no longer the case, guys. And we need to completely change this mindset. So what I want you to think about is, are you really serving 100% safe? Because what that means is that if you serve at 99% safe, then 1% of the time you're missing your serve. But here's the thing. What happens if you went out to the court and you started to use some of these tips and you started to swing with a little bit more power and a little bit more aggression? What happens if you are still at 100% success rate on your serve? That means beforehand you weren't at 100%. You were at 120%. And because you gave yourself a little bit more aggression, even then you're still not missing the serve. This is the problem. People are too safe with their serve, and they're not willing to cross that line and give themselves a little bit more risk. It's changing, guys. People are becoming more aggressive, and they're okay with missing a serve every now and then because they're winning points off of people's terrible returns. They are perfectly fine with sacrificing a few points by the way, without giving your opponent any point because you're the one that's serving, right? They're perfectly fine with that to get crummy returns to make their third easier. They are perfectly fine with that trade. So am I. And that's the mindset shift that I want to introduce to you. If you go out there and you start serving harder and you're still not missing, it means that you were heavily inefficient with your serve. So I hope these tips helped. I think that if you start to assimilate some of these things into your game, it's going to make a big difference. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Check out PK Academy. I have over 25 hours of content on there now. It's crazy. I'll see you guys next time.